And welcome back to Radio ATN. My name is Danny Pancratz. I'm one of the board members for the Attachment and Trauma Network, and very happy to be here with some of our exhibitors from ESSDACK. And also ran the very popular poverty simulation yesterday on our Academy Day here at the Creating Trauma Sensitive Schools Conference. So I was reading up on ESSDACK in preparation for this interview, and was really struck by the "We Believe" statements on your website. But also one of the things we wanted to talk about right now is something specific that you all believe, that becoming trauma responsive, the journey to that is a 3 to 5 year process. So Rebecca, do you want to start us off telling us a little bit about why you believe that time length and why it's that's the process to become trauma responsive?
Yeah, and so we actually found that in some other people's work, and then we started doing the work with school systems and really found like, oh yeah, this is really true. Just the science itself and the paradigms, it deepens and unfolds over time inside of each individual, and that certainly is the case inside of a system. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of stuff to work through, and a lot of competing belief systems, values, and certainly challenges that, you know, what we would say is just stay the course, because a couple of years down the road, people are like, oh wow, we're just different all of a sudden. And it really feels like that. It hasn't been all of a sudden, but it feels like all of a sudden we've shifted into, we can't go back. Mm-hmm. And so this is just the way we do it. This is the way we onboard people. So it definitely is a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned systems as part of that, and you know, through your work, you've learned a lot, as you mentioned, from looking at other systems. So what are some of the missteps that you've seen systems take, and how do you work that into your work to help people take the correct steps forward?
I think there's a couple. I'll speak to one. Is people get really excited about this, and they come back and they're just all in, and they haven't taken the time to prep the ground with their fellow staff people, with their community, with their families, and certainly inside of the school to get the buy-in from staff. I mean, we really go off of Jim Spohr-Leader's recommendation early on, was you need 70 to 80% buy-in from your staff before you start implementing. Wow. And that, I think, is one of the hardest things, is people start implementing in pockets, and then there's division and there's judgment and there's all the things. And so doing the foundation work with the building and seeing if people are actually ready to move together is probably one of the most important parts of the beginning phase.
I think another one is that this isn't a silver bullet to fix kids, right? Dr. Lori talked about this in her keynote downstairs about how it's for us. And so another misstep is assuming that in this process, you're going to just magically be curing all behavior and dysregulation within your building. And when we say 3 to 5 years, it doesn't mean 3 to 5 years to change the kids. It's 3 to 5 years to change your system and yourself, right, so that you're responding to the kids in front of you. And I think that's really big, is where does the focus land? We really like to wrap around the adults in the building. That's where we think the power in the change and transformation is.
And not only with wrapping around them with the science and the understanding, but also then that co-care, that co-regulation, not just take care of yourself, because that really isn't trauma informed. It's how do we do this together?
That's right.
You know, year over year, that's one of my favorite things about this conference, right? That what you've spoken about with the journey and doing this together, and you see so many educators, administrators, clinicians, and so many experts who are here continuing to learn themselves, and you know, speakers in individual sessions or keynotes talking about the evolution of their journey and their continued learning. So I think that mindset is really important. Any other missteps that any of you want to speak to? Or
I also think that the idea of jumping, like I work in restorative practices, and so we jump right away to a restorative circle when we haven't built that foundation. And that can be very dangerous, and it can be very, very harsh for people involved. And I think it takes away a lot of the steps that we've gone forward when we jump too far, too fast.
Mm-hmm. And speaking to restorative practices a little bit more, they also have to be consistent. People think, oh, I can try this strategy, this technique one time, and oh, it didn't work. Yeah. So they give up on it. You have to keep doing it in order to see the progression and the change.
Right, it's a journey. Okay, so you've hinted at some of this in talking about the missteps, but let's talk about what works. So through the work that you all do, what have you seen work for getting buy-in, for building those foundations, for this 3 to 5 year journey?
Ginger, I love what you always say about, and I'm sure we don't have time to go into the whole analogy, but the first year you sleep, the second year.
Yeah, I absolutely believe. I'm a gardener from a long time ago, and when you plant perennials, you know, the ones that come back year after year, you understand the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, and the third year they leap. And when I heard that in gardening, I thought that's true with school innovation. That the first year you sleep, second year creep, third year you leap. And then at the end of the third year, you're ready to take another giant bite toward innovation. And that cycle just keeps going. And if you know that, then at the end of first year, when everything's not magical and perfect and voila, that you can say, yes, this is the next step and this is how we're supposed to go. And it gives you space to make adjustments and to continue to breathe. And it gives space for folks who aren't right there with you. Because if we believe that somebody who's crossing their arms and we're not dismissing them. They're adults, they're kids, they're communicating through that behavior. What do they need to know? What do they need to understand? What do they not yet have? And how do we get that to them in a loving way?
Yeah. And I would say, like, for us, when Ginger, the sleep, the creep, the leap, it really was building kind of a framework that started with an activation phase, which is year one, which is, hey, here's the foundation. Hey, what do you guys think of this? And then right at the end of that, testing for buy-in, which leads into the equipping resilience coaches that we do year 2 with schools, which leads into the equipping restorative coaches that we do year 3. So you're really overhauling the system through the people inside the system, not experts continuing to come from the outside in.
Yeah.
We're speaking into their process, but we're coaching from the outside. We've got other Joe Brummer and Jim Sporleader coaching with us from the outside on these applications of systems change. And then finally getting to some real neuro-informed learning and neuro-informed education, right? Because all of this isn't about necessarily being therapists in schools for kids. It's about creating enough safety and activation up here that kids can learn and achieve and dream and build, and schools can be places of just changing stories and trajectories for many kids, not just the kids that schools always worked for.
And that's the community hub. In so many schools or so many communities, the school is the hub. So then how do we also have that communication broader with families,
Right.
with the systems outside, to really make not just a school change, not just a one person change, but an entire ecosystem. Yeah.
Well, it's no surprise with everything that you're saying why you're here at ATN's conference. All the things that you're saying is very close to, if you look at the We Believe statements on ATN's website, I know that our staff has partnered with you a lot and been at the same conferences. There's so much that I love about what you shared. Headed in the right direction. Dr. Lori had a really effective anecdote on that it's not about, in 1 week getting to the end. It's, are you headed in the right direction, even for ourselves and staff? And then I think that gardening metaphor is so great. I was in here listening to another Radio ATN interview we'll have for you, and a teacher was sharing, you never really know with that kind of the sleeping and the creeping that for people learning as well. She wasn't aware that some of the things they were doing with the children in her classroom were really resonating. Had a great anecdote about coming in late, and her students were just really excited that she was there because they wanted to do some of the practices that she had been doing with them. And this is something she didn't know it was resonating at all. And it was in that sleeping stage. So such a great metaphor for that. Well, we're really happy to have you here at ATN. I heard nothing but great things about the poverty simulation yesterday with Academy Day. It's such a great opportunity of us doing this in-person conference. For those of you on site here, be sure to check out the exhibit hall and visit ESSDAC's booth. Get to know them, learn a little bit more. More information on their website, things like that as well. Any last words of wisdom or things that we should share about ESSDAC for our audience?
We're learners. And so, what we know today, we didn't know 3 years ago, and what we'll know in 3 years. And so we want to know you. We want to continue to grow with ATN. And I think that's what's really, we're always like, how do we get out in front and figure out what to bring to people to help them find what they're looking for to create the experience of school that people are hungry for. Families are hungry for it. Teachers are hungry for it. Administrators, we all want the same thing. And so that's what I think I would say about ESSDAC, is we're just always looking. We're always curious about what are we missing? Like, how can we tweak something? What is getting in people's way? What are we, so that's what I think is really cool about being on this team, is that we're always trying to figure out how to grow.
Maximize strengths, minimize weaknesses.
And we're also a bunch of oddballs. At least I'll say it. Like, we're those people. And so, like, if you're those people, then come find us. We need to
Well, you're also a great example of doing it together, having the group of you here with us, and then, mentioning the others that you work with, and, working with the schools themselves, right? And really love everything we've heard. So thank you so much for your support of this conference, for being here. And thanks all of you for watching. I hope you'll join us for more Radio ATN, but more importantly for this conference in the future, whether it's in person with us or a virtual conference as well. Thanks, everyone.